The first time I realized something was wrong, it was over a grocery list. It was a Tuesday night, nothing special, and I was standing at the kitchen counter with my phone in my hand, reading off what we were out of. I had a pot of pasta going and the water kept threatening to boil over, and I remember thinking very clearly that my whole body felt heavy in a way I could not explain. I said, "Can you please add paper towels and dish soap to the list?" Evan did not look up from the couch. He was half watching something on TV and half scrolling. He said, "We don't need dish soap. I just bought it." I stared at the sink. The bottle was empty. I had turned it upside down that morning and gotten one sad drop. I said, "It's empty. I used the last of it." He sighed like I had made his evening harder. "You always think it's empty because you don't turn it right. There's some in there." I held the bottle up, shook it, and it made that hollow plastic sound. I could have walked over and placed it in his hand. I could have turned it upside down right in front of him. I could have argued for 3 minutes about a $10 bottle of soap. Instead I said, "Okay," and I put the bottle back under the sink. Then I added dish soap to the list myself silently like it was a secret. That sounds small. It was small, but it stayed in my head because it was not the dish soap. It was the feeling that he heard my voice and then chose a different version of reality anyway. Back then I still told myself he was just tired. He worked long hours. He was the kind of guy who always had a plan, always had a system. He did our taxes early, kept the car clean, made sure we had good insurance. When my friends met him, they said I was lucky. "He's so steady," my friend Nora told me once, like that was the main thing. I wanted steady. I did. I also wanted to be seen. We had been married for 3 years. We lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment in a complex that looked nice from the outside, but had thin walls and an elevator that smelled like dog shampoo. I worked in an office doing account support for a medical supply company. It was not glamorous. It was a lot of emails, a lot of polite phone calls, a lot of small problems that felt huge to the people on the other end. Most days I woke up before Evan. I would roll out of bed quietly, brush my teeth, pull my hair into a messy ponytail, and stand in the kitchen while the coffee maker gurgled. I liked those 10 minutes when the apartment was still, and I could hear the hum of the fridge and the distant traffic and nothing else. Then Evan would come in and kiss my head and open his laptop right on the table. Like the day had already started chasing him. He would talk about schedules. He would ask if I paid the electric bill. If I said yes, he would say, "Good," in a tone that sounded like he had been worried I would forget. I told myself he was just careful. I told myself he did not mean anything by it. But it kept happening. Not just with the dish soap. One morning I was getting ready for work and my eyes looked puffy. I had slept badly. I had had one of those nights where you wake up at 3 a.m. and your mind starts listing everything you did wrong that week. I stood in the bathroom mirror and pressed my fingertips under my eyes, and I felt this weird pressure in my chest like I could not get a full breath. When Evan came in, he glanced at me and said, "You should stop drinking coffee so late." I had not said anything yet. I had not complained. I had not asked for advice. I was just standing there trying to put on mascara without shaking. I said, "I think I'm just stressed." He said, "Well, you need to manage it better. You always do this to yourself. You take everything personally at work." I looked at him. He was not being cruel. He was not yelling. He was saying it the way someone might tell you to drink more water. Like a simple fix. Like my stress was a small, annoying habit. I said, "I'm tired." He nodded like he understood. Then he said, "Go to bed earlier. You stay up scrolling your phone. It's not good for you." I wanted to tell him I stayed up because the quiet at night felt like the only part of the day that belonged to me. I wanted to tell him I scrolled because I felt lonely even when he was in the same room. I wanted to tell him that I could go to bed at 9 and still wake up with that tight feeling in my chest. Instead, because it was 7:40 a.m. and I had to leave in 10 minutes, I said, "Okay." That became my answer for a lot of things. Okay, sure, fine. We had never been the couple that screamed at each other. We did not throw things. We did not slam doors. We were polite. We were functional. We were the kind of couple that other people thought was solid. But inside our apartment, there was a slow shift happening. It was like the air changed and no one pointed it out. Sometimes I would try again because I am not naturally quiet. I grew up in a house where my mom narrated everything she was doing and my dad asked questions at dinner, and you had to explain your day. Silence in my childhood home meant someone was sick. So I tried. On a Friday evening after a long week, I sat on the couch with Evan and told him, I feel like I do a lot of the mental stuff. Like remembering appointments, buying gifts, planning meals, keeping track of things. It's tiring. He did not even look at me. He said, just make a list. I blinked. I have lists. Then you're fine, he said. You like lists. You always have. This is not a real problem. I felt my face get hot. It feels like a problem to me. He finally looked at me and his expression was calm, almost patient. You're overthinking again. If you want help, tell me what to do. But don't make it emotional. It's simple. It was the phrase "don't make it emotional" that hit me like something sharp. I stared at the TV, which was showing a couple laughing in a commercial, and I realized I was holding my breath. I let it out slowly and said, never mind. Evan relaxed right away, like the conversation had been a little storm cloud that passed. Good, he said, and he put his arm around me for a second like that counted as fixing it. Later that night I went to bed early. I lay on my side with my phone dimmed and watched the numbers on the clock change. Evan came in around midnight, brushed his teeth loudly, and climbed into bed. He kissed my shoulder and said, love you. I said, love you too, because that was still true in a way. Or maybe it was habit. I did not know yet. The next day we drove to his parents' house for his mom's birthday. It was an hour away, mostly highway, and the car ride was usually when I tried to talk because we were trapped together in a small space. I looked out the window at the winter trees and said, I've been feeling kind of off lately. Evan's hands were on the steering wheel. He was the kind of driver who kept both hands on the wheel even on a straight road. He said, off how? Just sad. And tired. Like I'm carrying something. He nodded once. You should take vitamins. You never eat enough protein in the morning. I stared at him. I'm not talking about food. He shrugged. Your mood is connected to your habits. You need to fix the habits. I felt something inside me fold in on itself. It was not anger. It was not even surprise. It was this quiet, sinking understanding that my feelings were always going to be treated like a problem to solve, and he was always going to be the one holding the instruction manual. I tried one more time. Sometimes I just want you to listen. Like, just hear me. He glanced at me, and I could tell he thought he was being reasonable. I am listening. I'm telling you what to do. That's not listening, I said, and my voice sounded small even to me. He exhaled through his nose like he was trying not to be annoyed. Okay, but if you don't want solutions, then what do you want? You want me to just sit here and say that sucks? I hesitated because part of me did want that. I wanted him to say, that sounds hard, without making it my fault. I wanted him to ask, what's been weighing on you? I wanted to feel like we were on the same team, but I could hear how he said it. Like it was silly, like it was a waste of time. So I said, never mind. Again. At his parents' house, I smiled and helped set the table and laughed at his dad's jokes. Evan's mom hugged me and said, you look tired, honey. Before I could answer, Evan said, she stays up too late. I keep telling her. His mom frowned a little and touched my arm. Well, you need rest. I smiled and said, yeah. And I felt that same heat in my face. It was embarrassing, but not in a big dramatic way. Just a quiet humiliation, like being corrected in front of someone when you did not ask. On the drive home, Evan hummed along to the radio. He seemed happy. He had been praised for fixing his uncle's printer. His mom had sent him home with leftovers. Life to him was running the way it should. I looked at his profile in the dashboard light and thought, he is not a bad man. He loves me in his way. He pays attention to things. He just does not pay attention to me when I am not easy. That night, after we ate leftover cake, I stood in the kitchen washing dishes and Evan came up behind me and kissed my neck. I stiffened without meaning to. He noticed and said, what's wrong now? The words now and wrong landed together like a judgment. I turned off the water. I kept my hands in the sink, holding a plate that was already clean. I said very carefully, nothing is wrong. I'm just tired. He leaned on the counter and watched me like he was waiting for the real answer. You always say you're tired. You need to do something about it. You can't just keep being tired. I swallowed. My throat felt tight. I'm trying. He shook his head like he was disappointed but trying to be patient. Trying is not doing. You need a plan. I could feel my heart beating a little faster. It was not fear. It was this sense of being backed into a corner, not by anger but by certainty. His certainty. His need to be right. I put the plate in the drying rack and finally turned to face him. My hands were wet and my sleeves were damp. I said, Evan, I don't need a plan right now. I need you to just be with me. I need you to stop correcting me every time I say how I feel. His eyebrows lifted. Correcting you? Yes, I said, and I heard my own voice trembling and it made me more frustrated. When I say I'm tired, you tell me I'm doing it wrong. When I say I'm stressed, you tell me I'm overthinking. When I say I'm lonely, you tell me to make a list. It makes me feel like there's no point talking. He stared at me for a second, and in that moment I felt something hopeful. Like maybe he would finally understand. Like maybe he would step forward and say, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. Like maybe he would hold my face and tell me he heard me. Instead he said, You're being dramatic. I'm trying to help you. Why do you always twist it? My stomach dropped. It was so fast and so familiar that it almost felt physical, like missing a step on a staircase. I'm not twisting it, I said. This is how it feels. He crossed his arms. Feelings are not facts, Hannah. You always do this. You make everything about how you feel. I'm telling you what makes sense. I stared at him. I had never heard him say my name like that before, in that tone, like he was calling me back into line. The kitchen light buzzed softly above us. The dishwasher hummed. Outside, I could hear someone's car door slam in the parking lot. I realized I was holding the edge of the counter with both hands, gripping it hard like I needed something solid. Evan looked at me like he was waiting for me to calm down and admit he was right. I opened my mouth, ready to argue, ready to explain, ready to beg for something that should not have to be begged for. And then my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from my manager. Need you to cover tomorrow morning. Sorry, last minute. I stared at the screen and something in me went very still. Because I could already hear Evan's response. I could already hear him telling me I should have better boundaries, that I should say no, that I let people walk all over me. I could already feel the conversation turning into another lesson. I looked up at him, and he was already glancing at my phone. He said, See? This is what I mean. You need to stop letting them do that to you. I felt my mouth close. I felt my shoulders drop a fraction, like my body was giving up before my mind caught up. I picked up the phone slowly and I heard myself say, Yeah, you're right. But inside I did not feel agreement. I felt the beginning of something else. And as I stood there in our bright kitchen, with wet hands and a clean plate and a text I did not want, I realized I was about to make a choice that I had never made before. I just did not know yet what it would cost. On Sunday morning I went to the shift anyway. I got up before it was fully light outside. The apartment was cold because Evan always turned the heat down at night, and I stood in the kitchen in my socks, making coffee quietly so the machine would not wake him. I ate a piece of toast over the sink because that was faster than sitting down. My phone was on the counter with my manager's text still sitting there like a little weight. I did not tell Evan I was annoyed about going in. I did not tell him I was angry at myself for saying yes. I did not tell him I wanted him to say, That's not fair. You shouldn't have to do that. I already knew what he would say. When I walked into the bedroom to get my sweater, he rolled over and blinked at me. You're really going? Yeah, I said. He rubbed his face and sat up. You have to stop doing this. They think you'll always cover. I know, I said, and my voice sounded flat even to me. Evan watched me for a second. Why are you mad at me? I paused with my arms halfway into my sweater. I'm not mad at you. You look mad, he said. I'm just saying what's true. I pulled the sweater down and grabbed my bag. I'm not mad. I'm just tired. He leaned back against the headboard. If you're tired, you should have said no. This is what I keep telling you. There it was. The lesson. The correction. The feeling that the only acceptable emotion in our house was the emotion he approved of. I looked at him and for a second I almost said it again, the thing I had tried to say in the kitchen. I almost said, Can you just ask how I feel without turning it into a problem? I almost said, "Can you just be on my side?" But I could already see how it would go. He would say I was making it emotional. He would say he was trying to help. He would say I twisted his words. He would wait for me to calm down. So I nodded once. "Okay," I said, and I left. Outside, the air was sharp. My car had a thin layer of frost on the windshield, and I scraped it off with the edge of an old gift card. My fingers went numb, and it felt almost good because it was something clear, something simple, ice scraping glass. At work, the building was quiet and half-lit. The weekend crew was small. The break room smelled like burnt coffee and microwaved eggs. I answered emails and processed orders and tried to ignore the dull ache behind my eyes. Around noon, I got another message from my manager. "Also, can you stay an extra hour? Shipment issue." I stared at it. My first instinct was to say yes automatically. That was what I did. I smoothed things over. I made life easier for everyone. I kept the wheels turning. I thought about Evan's voice, how he said, "You have to stop doing this," like it was a flaw in my character. I typed, "I can't today. I have plans." Then I stared at the words because my heart was racing like I had done something dangerous. I hit send. My manager replied 10 seconds later. "Okay." That was it. No anger. No punishment. Just okay. I sat there in my little cubicle and felt my throat tighten. And I could not even tell if I wanted to laugh or cry. It was such a small moment, but it made something clear. Sometimes the fear was bigger than the reality. Sometimes the hardest part was just choosing myself once. When I got home, Evan was in the living room with a baseball game on, eating chips out of the bag. He looked up when I came in. "Did you stay late?" he asked. "No," I said, taking my coat off. He blinked like he did not expect that answer. "Why not?" "Because I said no," I said. For a second I thought he might say, "Good job." I thought he might smile at me like he was proud. I thought maybe this could be one of those moments where we felt like a team. Instead he said, "See? It's not hard. You just needed to do it." I stood there with my keys in my hand, and that quiet sinking feeling came back. Even when I did the thing he wanted, it still became proof that he had been right all along. My effort disappeared into his certainty. I walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge. We had his mom's leftovers in there, stacked in plastic containers. I pulled one out and stared at it like it would tell me what to do next. Evan followed me. "What are you making?" "I don't know," I said. "Maybe we can just eat leftovers." He frowned. "We should use the chicken tonight. It'll go bad." "It's fine," I said, and my voice was sharper than I meant. Evan's eyes narrowed slightly. "Why are you being like this?" I took a slow breath. "I'm not being like anything. I'm just tired." "You always say that," he said again like a complaint. "It's like you want to be tired. You don't do anything to fix it." I set the container down. I rested both hands on the counter, feeling the cool surface under my palms, grounding myself. I could feel that familiar urge rising in me, the urge to explain myself until he understood. I could already feel myself forming sentences in my head, trying to make my feelings sound logical enough that he would accept them. But another part of me, the part that had typed, "I can't today" at work, whispered, "What if you do not explain? What if you stop trying to earn permission to feel?" I turned and looked at him. "Evan, I don't want to talk about my tiredness like it's a problem you need to solve. I want you to stop treating it like I'm doing something wrong." He stared at me. "I'm not treating you like you're doing something wrong. I'm telling you the truth." "That's the same thing," I said quietly. He scoffed. "No, it's not. You're just sensitive." That word hit me. Sensitive. He said it like it was a label he had put on me years ago and now it explained everything. I felt my face go hot again. "I'm not sensitive. I'm just asking you to listen." "I am listening," he said louder now. "But you're not hearing me. You keep saying you're tired and lonely and stressed, and then you don't want any solutions. What am I supposed to do?" I wanted to say you could hold me. You could ask questions. You could stop trying to win every small conversation. But the problem was, with Evan, it always came back to the same place. He believed there was a correct way to feel and he believed he knew it. If I did not match his idea of reasonable, then my feelings were wrong. I looked at him and suddenly I was tired in a different way. I was tired of translating myself. Tired of making my voice softer so he would not accuse me of being dramatic. Tired of walking into every conversation already bracing for correction. I picked up my phone from the counter and scrolled without really looking, just to give my hand something to do. Evan watched me, waiting. Are you going to answer? I swallowed. I don't know what to say. He threw his hands up slightly. This is what I mean. You shut down. You just stop talking. You act like I'm the bad guy. I stared at the floor. My throat felt thick. I wanted to tell him I was shutting down because talking did not feel safe anymore. Not physically unsafe, but emotionally unsafe. Like I would put something real on the table and he would push it back at me and call it wrong. Instead, I heard myself say, I'm sorry. Evan's shoulders relaxed immediately, like the tension in the room had a switch and my apology turned it off. Okay, he said. Let's just have a normal night. I don't want to fight. I did not correct him. I did not say, we weren't fighting. I did not say, this is not a fight, this is me trying to exist. I just nodded and started heating up leftovers. That night, we ate in front of the TV. Evan laughed at something and offered me a chip. I took it and smiled because that was the easiest thing. The apartment felt calm on the surface. The hum of normal life. A couple on a couch, dinner, a show. But inside me, something had shifted. It was not a big decision. It was not a dramatic thought like, I'm leaving. It was smaller and colder. It was the realization that I was starting to protect myself by becoming quiet. On Monday, I tried to be normal. I got up, got dressed, made coffee, packed my lunch. Evan kissed my cheek and said, have a good day. At work, Nora messaged me. Are you coming to my place Friday? We're doing a little thing. I typed back, yes. And then I paused because I realized I had not checked with Evan. Not because I needed permission, but because I already knew he would have an opinion about it. He would ask what time. He would ask who would be there. He would ask what the point was. He would suggest we should stay home and rest instead. I typed another message to Nora. I'll confirm the time. Then I stared at my screen and felt that familiar tightness in my chest. Why did every small plan feel like something I had to prepare a defense for? That evening when I got home, Evan was already cooking. He was good at cooking when he wanted to be. He had a recipe open on his phone and music playing softly. He looked up and smiled. Hey, he said. I'm making stir-fry. You like this one? I do, I said, and I meant it. This was the part that made it confusing. He could be thoughtful. He could do nice things. If I had told someone, my husband doesn't listen to me, they might picture someone cruel or careless. Evan was not careless in obvious ways. He remembered to buy my favorite sparkling water. He scheduled my car's oil change when I forgot. He called when he was running late. But listening was different. Listening required him to accept that my inner world existed, even when it did not match his plan. We ate at the table, which was rare for us. He asked about my day, and I told him one simple thing about a coworker messing up an order. Evan shook his head and said, see, that's why you have to document everything. You need to cover yourself. People will always mess up. I nodded because I did not want to invite a full conversation. I could feel it now like a reflex. Keep it light, keep it simple, keep your real feelings tucked away. Halfway through dinner, I said, Nora invited us over Friday. Evan paused with his fork in midair. For what? Just a small get-together, I said. A couple people. He frowned. On Friday? We have errands. We need to go to Costco. And I wanted to look at that new phone plan. We can do errands Saturday, I said. Evan set his fork down carefully. Saturday is busy. It makes more sense to do it Friday after work. Plus, you're always exhausted on Fridays. You'll just complain the whole time. I felt my jaw tighten. I'm not going to complain. He tilted his head slightly. You always do. You say you're tired. You say you don't want to go. Then you go anyway and act quiet. It's not fun. There was a moment of silence. The words sat between us. I could hear the refrigerator hum again. I could hear a neighbor's muffled music through the wall. I realized he was describing me like I was a problem he had already solved. Like he had decided who I was, and now he spoke to that version of me. I put my fork down too. Maybe I'm quiet because I'm tired of being told how I feel, I said before I could stop myself. Evan's eyes narrowed. What does that mean? My heart started pounding. I could feel the cliff edge coming. That place where a conversation turned from normal to heavy. I could see him getting ready mentally to correct me. I took a breath and tried to keep my voice calm. It means sometimes I just want to make a plan without it turning into a debate. I want to go to Nora's on Friday. Evan leaned back slightly like he was assessing me. Why is it so important? Because I miss my friends, I wanted to say. Because I feel like my life is shrinking. Because I want to be somewhere I can talk and not be corrected. But I did not say any of that yet. I just said, because I want to. Evan's face hardened in a small way. That's not an answer, Hannah. I felt my hands curl slightly on the table, nails pressing into my skin. The urge to explain surged again, fast and familiar. I could feel myself about to start listing reasons, trying to make my want sound logical enough to be approved. And then in the middle of that pressure, another thought came, quiet but clear. If I have to argue for every simple want, what am I doing? I looked at Evan, and for the first time I did not rush to fill the silence. I did not apologize. I did not soften it. I just sat there breathing, letting the quiet stretch. Evan's eyes flicked over my face, like he was waiting for me to return to the version of me he understood. Hannah, he said slower now, are you seriously making this into a thing? I opened my mouth, and then I heard myself say very calmly, yes, I am. Evan stared at me like he had never seen me before. Evan stared at me for a long second like he was recalculating something. Then he laughed, short and surprised. You're serious? Yes, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. He shook his head. I don't get why you're doing this. We were having a normal dinner. That's the problem, I said. This is normal now. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. So what, you want to fight? I don't want to fight, I said. I want to go to Nora's on Friday. And I don't want to explain it like I'm asking permission. His jaw tightened. I'm not your father. I know, I said. But sometimes it feels like you think you know better than me about my own life. That landed harder than I expected. I saw it in his face, the way his expression closed a little. That's unfair, he said. I'm just practical. About everything, I said. Including my feelings. He stood up and took his plate to the sink, a little louder than necessary. You always turn things into this. I try to keep things running smoothly, and you act like I'm controlling you. I stayed seated. My heart was pounding, but I did not chase him. That felt new. I'm not acting, I said. I'm telling you how it feels. He turned around, arms crossed. Feelings are not facts. I know, I said. But they still matter. He looked at me like I was speaking a language he did not respect. So what do you want from me, Hannah? You want me to just agree with everything you say? No, I said. I want you to stop correcting me every time I open my mouth. Silence settled between us, thick and awkward. The food was getting cold on the table. The music he had been playing earlier had stopped, and the apartment felt suddenly too quiet. Evan finally said, "You're being dramatic." Something in me went very still. I nodded once. Okay. That surprised him. He blinked. Okay. Yes, I said. I don't want to keep talking about this right now. He studied my face, suspicious. You're just shutting down again. Maybe, I said. I need space. He scoffed. From what? A conversation? I stood up and took my plate to the sink, rinsing it slowly. I focused on the water, on the sound it made, on the simple fact that I was breathing. I'm going to bed, I said. It's barely 9, he said. I know. I walked into the bedroom and closed the door gently behind me. I did not slam it. I did not cry right away. I sat on the edge of the bed and took off my shoes, then lay down and stared at the ceiling. My phone buzzed. A text from Nora. So are you coming Friday? I typed, yes. I did not add anything else. I slept badly. I woke up at 2 a.m. Then 4:30, then again just before my alarm. Evan did not come to bed until late. When he did, he stayed on his side and did not touch me. In the morning we moved around each other like polite strangers. He made coffee. I packed my lunch. We said, have a good day, like coworkers. At work I felt hollow. Not sad exactly. Just emptied out. I answered emails and nodded in meetings and smiled at the right moments. Inside, I kept replaying the dinner conversation, not to argue with it, but to study it. I noticed how often I had almost apologized. How often I had almost backed down. Around noon my mom called. "Hey sweetheart," she said. "How are you?" I hesitated. "I'm okay." "You don't sound okay." I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling tiles. "I'm just tired." She was quiet for a moment. "That tired?" Something in her voice made my chest ache. I swallowed. "Yeah." "Is everything okay with Evan?" she asked gently. I opened my mouth to say yes. That was the reflex. That was the script. But the words did not come. "I don't know," I said finally. She did not push. She just said, "Well, I'm here if you want to talk." "Thanks," I said, and I meant it. That night, Evan came home late. I was already on the couch, scrolling through my phone without really reading anything. He dropped his bag by the door and glanced at me. "You still mad?" he asked. I looked up. "I'm not mad." He sighed. "You say that, but you act cold." "I'm just quiet," I said. "That's the same thing," he said. I did not respond. He stood there for a second, then said, "So what's the plan for Friday?" "I'm going to Norris," I said. "With or without me?" "With or without you," I said honestly. "I'm going." He frowned. "You're serious about this?" "Yes." He shook his head slowly. "You're being really stubborn." I almost laughed because it was so familiar. Anytime I did not bend, I was stubborn. Anytime I held my ground, I was difficult. "I don't think I am," I said. "I think I'm just choosing." "Choosing what?" he asked. I looked at him. I thought about how to answer in a way that would not turn into another lecture. I chose simplicity. "Choosing myself," I said. His mouth tightened. "That's selfish." The word sat there heavy. I felt something else settle inside me then. Not anger. Not fear. A calm distance. "I'm going to take a shower," I said. In the bathroom, I let the water run hot and stood under it until my skin turned pink. I rested my forehead against the tile and closed my eyes. I thought about the early days when Evan had listened more. Or maybe I had talked less about things that mattered. I wondered when the balance had shifted, when my voice had become something to manage instead of something to hear. On Friday I got dressed carefully. Not fancy. Just jeans and a sweater. Evan watched me from the doorway. "You're really going?" he said again, like he was still hoping I would change my mind. "Yes," I said. He crossed his arms. "I think this is a mistake." "I don't," I said. He shook his head. "You're pushing me away." I paused with my hand on my bag. "I've been standing right here the whole time." He did not reply. At Nora's place, the apartment was warm and loud. Someone had music on. There were drinks on the counter and coats piled on the bed. Nora hugged me tight. "You okay?" she asked softly in my ear. I hesitated, then nodded. "Better now." We sat on the floor with paper plates and talked about work and stupid TV shows and plans that had nothing to do with responsibility. No one corrected me. No one told me what I should be doing differently. On the drive home later, I felt lighter. And that scared me. Evan was awake when I got back. He was sitting on the couch in the dark. "You had fun," he said flatly. "Yes," I said. He looked at me like that answer hurt him. "Good," he said, but it did not sound like it. We went to bed without touching. Over the next weeks, something settled into place. I spoke less. Not because I was trying to punish him, but because it felt safer. Conversations stayed practical. Groceries. Schedules. Bills. Evan noticed. "You're distant," he said one night. "I'm fine," I said. He frowned. "You never talk anymore." I looked at him, really looked. "I tried," I said quietly. He stared back, confused and frustrated. "About what?" I opened my mouth. Then I closed it again. Because in that moment, I realized something that made my chest ache in a new way. He genuinely did not know what I meant. And I did not know how to explain it anymore. After that night, the silence became official. Not announced. Not discussed. Just accepted. Evan stopped asking what was wrong. I stopped volunteering anything that mattered. We moved through the apartment like two people who knew each other's schedules but not each other's thoughts. Mornings were quiet and efficient. Evenings were predictable. Dinner, TV, separate phones, separate corners of the couch. If I said something small like work was weird today, Evan would nod and say, "That's life." If I mentioned being tired, he would say, "You should really fix your sleep." So I stopped mentioning it. I talked about neutral things. Weather. Traffic. A show we both watched. On the outside, we probably looked better than before. No tension. No heavy conversations. No awkward pauses where one of us waited for the other to understand. Inside me, something cooled completely. It was strange how calm it felt. I had expected silence to feel painful, but after a while it felt like relief. I was no longer bracing myself. No longer preparing explanations. No longer replaying conversations in my head, wondering how I could have said things better. I told myself this was just a phase. That maybe all couples went through this. That maybe I was the problem, that maybe I expected too much. But then little moments started stacking up. One evening, I came home to find Evan had rearranged the kitchen cabinets. My mugs were on a higher shelf now. The spices were moved. The drawer I always reached for was suddenly empty. "You moved everything," I said. "It makes more sense this way," he said. "More efficient." "You didn't ask me." He looked genuinely surprised. "Why would I need to?" I stood there looking at a kitchen that no longer felt like mine. "Because I use it too." He sighed. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." That night I stood on a chair to reach my mug and felt something crack, very quietly. Another time I mentioned casually that I might want to switch departments at work. Not a decision, just a thought. Evan immediately said, "That's a bad idea. You need stability. You're not good with change." I waited. I waited for him to ask why I was thinking about it. I waited for curiosity. It did not come. "I didn't say I was doing it," I said. "I know," he said. "I'm just telling you now so you don't waste time." I nodded. And later, alone in the shower, I pressed my palm against my mouth to keep from making a sound I did not want him to hear. The moment I knew something was truly over did not happen during a fight. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon. We were sitting at the table, both on our laptops. I was scrolling through old photos, cleaning up my phone storage. There were pictures from our early years. Road trips. Bad haircuts. Laughing at nothing. I stopped at one photo of me taken by Evan on a beach years ago. I remembered the day clearly. I remembered feeling seen then. I felt a sudden sharp urge to say something real. One last attempt. Not to fix us but to check if there was still anything to reach. I closed my laptop and said, "Evan, can I ask you something?" He did not look up. "Make it quick." I swallowed. "Do you think you listen to me?" He paused, then looked at me like the question was odd. "Of course I do. Really listen," I said. "Not just hear words. But listen." He frowned slightly. "I listen enough. You just don't like what I say back." That was it. Not cruel. Not loud. Just final. I felt something settle into place like the last piece of a puzzle clicking in. "I see," I said. He watched me carefully. "Why are you asking this now?" I took a breath. "Because I feel like I've been disappearing in this marriage." He shook his head immediately. "That's dramatic." "I don't think it is," I said. "I feel smaller than I used to. Quieter. Like I don't exist unless I'm easy." "That's on you," he said. "I never told you to stop talking." I nodded slowly. "No. You just made it pointless." He stared at me, annoyed now. "So what, you're blaming me for your feelings again?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time I did not feel the urge to convince him. "I'm not blaming you," I said. "I'm explaining why I'm done." The word hung between us. "Done with what?" he asked. I folded my hands on the table to keep them from shaking. "Done trying to be heard by someone who doesn't believe my feelings matter." He laughed once, sharp. "You're overreacting." "No," I said quietly. "I'm finally reacting." He leaned back. "So what are you saying? You want a break? Counseling? Because this is fixable if you stop being so emotional about it." I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. "I don't want counseling," I said. "Because I already know how that will go. You'll explain. I'll explain. And somehow I'll still be wrong." "That's not fair," he said. "I know," I said. But it's true. He stood up abruptly. You're throwing away a good marriage because you don't like my tone. I stood too. No. I'm leaving because I don't recognize myself anymore. Silence. Finally, he said. So you're just giving up? I shook my head. I gave up a long time ago. This is me choosing myself. That night I packed a bag. Just clothes and my laptop and my charger. I did it slowly. Evan watched from the doorway, arms crossed. You'll regret this, he said. Maybe, I said. But I already regret staying quiet for so long. I drove to my mom's place. She opened the door in her robe, took one look at my face, and pulled me into a hug without asking questions. In the weeks that followed, Evan sent messages. Practical ones at first. Bills. Logistics. Then longer ones explaining his side. Explaining how he had always tried to help. How I misunderstood him. How I was too sensitive. I read them. I did not argue. One day he wrote, I don't know why you never told me it was this bad. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed, I did. Many times. You just didn't hear it. I did not feel healed. I did not feel strong all the time. Some nights I cried over nothing. Some mornings I missed the routine, the predictability. But something important had returned. My voice. It was quiet at first. Unsteady. But it was mine again. And this time I promised myself I would not give it to someone who kept trying to correct it.